I guess just it's just a big easy. I mean, you just the Creole life is just laid back. Just take it one day at a time.
What is your definition of Creole?
How do I define Creole?
A lot of different things. It's culturally the mixture of food, music, and I guess ethnic origin.
Beautiful people, the beautiful food, the music. It's kind of the, I don't know, mixing of everything here. It's kind of like gumbo, you know, you put a lot of different things in a pot and you get a beautiful end result. And that's, I guess, what the Creole culture in New Orleans, I guess, would mean to me.
I'm not so sure if I'm right, but what they say in New Orleans is because of a mixture of Caribbean folks with white folks, which through the evolution became black and white, which is a bit of a coloration situation.
She's saying, what is the Creole in our own words, grandmother? What would your answer be? What would you say about that?
I'd say human beings.
She said human beings. I don't know. Well, you know, the definition of Creole, I think, is the Spanish, the Native Americans, and the black race, I think, is all considered Creoles. Now, they're different from Cajun. I don't know what they define as Cajun, but Creoles is like a melting pot of what New Orleans, the natives of New Orleans consist of. It's just a combination of all the different races that, you know, especially with those three entities in it.
Originally in New Orleans, the term Creole referred to African slaves that were born in the New World into existing slave families. Eventually, the descendants of the French and Spanish colonial population of the city adopted the term in order to distinguish themselves from the newly arriving Europeans. These Creoles led extremely social lives that were mainly centered around family, and they generally did not stray away from the Creole communities in which they were raised. They relied heavily on their religious traditions and remained a very European culture, which is why the French Quarter in New Orleans has such a unique European flair. At this time, New Orleans also became home to the free people of color who hailed from the island nation of Haiti. The Haitians migrated to the U.S. after a slave uprising, and because they did, African heritage became a part of the Creole culture over time. After the Civil War, all persons of color were subject to racial discrimination, regardless of their social status. Jim Crow laws in the South stated that any person with at least one black great-grandparent was considered colored. Because of this, light-skinned descendants of colonial French, Spanish, and African people began referring to themselves as Creoles so that they would not experience discrimination.
What do you see in your daily life that reflects the Creole culture?
It's a minority, small minority in New Orleans. The New Orleans culture is a black culture and has a lot of white folks. But the Creole is a very petite minority. It's a few families, and they stay with that.
Just look around you, anywhere you go. I mean, every part of the city is so different and so unique, and that's the beauty of it. Just everywhere you go, it's so different, but it stays the same too, which is really interesting.
I would say you would see it through the accents. They speak with a different accent. You'll hear them saying things like "shat," and that's just like girl or friend. You know, and then they mix. It's the accent. Definitely, it's definitely accent.
A lot in the food and the celebration.
Traditions. Yeah. I would say even the architecture.
A large part of the unique nature of the city of New Orleans comes from the distinctive styles of food and architecture. The Creole culture brings a style like none other to the food industry. Out of 838 total restaurants in New Orleans, 176 of them, about 21%, identify themselves as Creole restaurants. Compared with other cities in the United States, this is a relatively high amount. Creole restaurants in Atlanta, Georgia come to a total of 0.006%, and Chicago, Illinois has 0%. The Creole food culture has not spread very far from New Orleans itself, as shown by the low percentage of Creole restaurants in other southern and northern cities. Creole originated from a combination of European tastes, African cooks, and the available ingredients from Louisiana. The food relies heavily on spices brought to the New World by the Spanish, and many Creole foods have similar tastes because of them.
The most well-known Creole dishes are gumbo, jambalaya, which is based on Spanish paella, and Creole rice. Each of these dishes consists of rice, pork, fish, peppers, dark roux sauce, spicy andouille sausage or pork tazo, and picante sauce. Creole architecture is mostly seen in houses and residential areas as opposed to commercial. Creole, two-bay, and raised center hall cottages, along with townhouses and shotgun and double shotgun houses, are examples of Creole architecture. Creole, raised center hall, and two-bay cottages are mostly found in Vieux Carré and Faubourg-Marigny neighborhoods that surround the French Quarter. The Creole and two-bay cottages are both small, square, or rectangular houses that are very standard and are never too over the top. The raised center hall cottages, although in the same location, are larger, raised 8 feet off the ground, and have full porches. Townhouses are primarily found in the French Quarter. They are two-story houses with balconies or galleries. These types of houses were created so that families could own small businesses on the ground floor and then live above them. Shotgun and double shotgun houses are spread throughout New Orleans and are long rectangular houses that are raised off the ground. The main difference between a double shotgun house and the original styled house is that the double shotgun house shares a central wall which allows room to build a second house directly beside it. All of these houses have large shuttered windows which were created so that in the hot New Orleans summer the windows could be opened to allow breezes to pass through.
What is the most attractive aspect of the Creole culture?
I would say the celebration.
Yeah, I was gonna say traditions. Yeah. So I think we're kind of lacking in those in general, traditions in general. So I appreciate that they have so many of them.
It's a mystery. Number one, it's not well defined. It could be a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So it has a broad base of appeal based on definition. And then I think once people experience particularly the food, they get really hooked very easily because it's so good.
It's a tough question because there's attractiveness in everything about the Creole culture. You know, the people, the food, the music, everything about it it's attractive in itself.
We have really interesting foods, and I think that people have a kind of forgiving or accepting idea about a person's background. If you don't come from the same background I come from, that's okay. If I grow up where I think a mixing of cultures can create a good thing, then I'm not going to say that your culture has to be what I define it as. I'm going to try to accept you for being whatever you determine it to be.
Today, the Creole culture in New Orleans is kept alive through the traditions and festivals of its people. Traditions such as cultural music and a laid-back view of the world are a large part of the Creole way of life. Zydeco music is extremely popular in New Orleans today. It is derived from the traditional Creole la-la music and is a combination of Creole, Cajun, African, and Caribbean folk songs with a foundation in R&B. Zydeco is characterized by the use of accordions, spoons, scrub boards, fiddles, and triangles. One of the most famous Creole recording artists was Armide Ardouin, a Zydeco accordionist from southern Louisiana. Today, Zydeco music can be heard all around the city and is especially popular with street musicians, as is jazz music, which also has roots in Creole culture. Several festivals are held in New Orleans every year to celebrate certain aspects of the Creole culture. The French Market Creole Tomato Festival and the Trem Creole Gumbo Festival are two of the most well-known events associated with the Creole culture. Festivals are a good way for tourists to get involved in the Creole way of life and keep the traditions alive. Creole culture has influenced New Orleans in many ways and can be seen in everyday life through food, architecture, and traditions of the Creole people. Today, the Creole way of life exhibits a love for all people and a laid-back, easygoing philosophy that fits in perfectly with the joie de vivre of the Big Easy.
Oh, Music Factory's bad.